Welcome to the deep dive. And hey, before we jump into today's topic, just a quick shout out. If you're looking for more amazing insights like what we're about to discuss, you really have to check out Mind Expansion Daily. Seriously, it's packed with great stuff. While you're there, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe to Mind Expansion Daily. It really helps us grow this community. And look, if you enjoy what we do here, maybe consider buying us a coffee. The link's right down there in the description. Every bit helps keep these deep dives going. Okay, so today, we are getting into something that really hits at the core of, well, identity, family, even the law. DNA paternity testing. It feels like these tests have just exploded, With all the at-home kits available now and this huge curiosity people have about their genes, our goal today, to really unpack the science behind them, get into the very real emotional side of things, and figure out the legal implications, especially here in America. We're going to look at the truth they reveal, sure, but also the consequences and the human stories tangled up in this technology. So let's start with the science.
I mean, how accurate are these tests, really? What makes them so reliable?
Right. The science is actually incredibly solid. It all hinges on a really basic biological fact. We inherit exactly half our DNA from each biological parent. This creates a unique genetic signature for everyone. And that unique link, that's what these tests are designed to find with really remarkable accuracy.
Okay, so it's about matching those signatures. How do they actually do that?
Well, the most common way is using what's called an autosomal DNA test. It looks at specific markers, usually about 20 to 30 of them. They're called short tandem repeats, or STRs, and they're on the chromosomes that don't determine sex. Think of them like tiny, unique genetic fingerprints scattered through your DNA. They vary a lot between people.
Genetic fingerprints, I like that. And getting the sample is easy, right? Just a cheek swab.
Exactly. Super simple, painless. You just swab the inside of your cheek. It's quick, non-invasive, and importantly, it gives a really reliable DNA sample.
And the accuracy numbers you mentioned, they sound almost unbelievable.
They are impressive. You look at major labs like Quest Diagnostics, they report something like 99.9% accuracy when confirming paternity. And maybe even more significant, they state 100% accuracy when ruling out someone who isn't the father. That kind of certainty, well, it's powerful. There was a study in the American Journal of Human Genetics in 2024 backing this up.
99.9% confirmation, 100% exclusion. That's incredibly precise. Almost seems infallible. Are there, any rare exceptions or things people misunderstand about that accuracy?
It's definitely very close to infallible in standard cases, which is why it's such a potent tool. And, what's really shifted things is the cost. Just a decade ago, you might pay, $500 for a test now? You can get these at-home kits for maybe $60 up to $150. That's put this kind of scientific certainty within reach for, millions.
Yeah, that price drop is huge.
Yeah.
So how does the lab actually compare the DNA once they have the swabs?
It's fundamentally a comparison process. Technicians isolate the DNA from the child and the potential father. Then they look specifically at those STR markers we talked about. If the markers match up across enough locations, following the rules of inheritance, it confirms paternity. If there are mismatches markers the child has that couldn't have come from that man, it definitively excludes him.
Simple comparison. Got it. Are there other types of tests for trickier situations?
Oh, absolutely. For more complex cases, maybe tracing lineage further back, or for specific legal reasons, there are other tests. Things like Y chromosome testing, which follows the direct male line, or mitochondrial DNA testing, which tracks the maternal line. And a big factor recently has been the advances in sequencing technology, next-generation sequencing specifically. It lets labs analyze huge amounts of DNA quickly and cheaply. A report in Nature Genetics just this year highlighted how this has drastically cut down result times, sometimes just days now, and helped keep costs down too.
Okay, the science is clearly very powerful, very precise. But like you said, this isn't just about matching markers in a lab. A DNA result can change everything someone thought they knew about who they are, about their family. How do these tests play out on that really human level, the emotional side?
You're absolutely right. That's where it gets incredibly complex. These tests carry enormous emotional weight precisely because they hit at the foundations of identity and family relationships. A result can shatter long-held family bonds or force someone to completely rethink their sense of self, their history. And what's often hidden, but significant, is the rate of what's called misattributed paternity, where the man raising the child isn't the biological father.
Misattributed paternity, how common is that actually?
Estimates vary. But studies, like one in Human Genetics in 2024, suggest it could be anywhere from 1% to maybe even 10% of births in the U.S. Now, that's not just a number. Each case represents a potential hidden earthquake under a family's foundation, a sort of quiet uncertainty about identity that can linger for generations.
1 to 10%.
Yeah.
Wow, that's a lot higher than I would have guessed. The ripple effects must be huge.
They really are. For the child, finding out later in life can trigger a real identity crisis, questions about roots, heritage, belonging. For the parents involved, there can be intense feelings, guilt, betrayal, deep shame, anger. It's telling that a Journal of Family Psychology survey in 2023 found that nearly half, 45% of adults going through paternity disputes reported symptoms of anxiety or depression. The emotional toll is undeniable.
Almost half experiencing anxiety or depression. That really brings home the human cost. Is there maybe a specific story you can share that kind of illustrates this?
Yes, there are many, sadly, but one that got some attention was Emily's story out of Texas, reported by the Washington Post in 2024. She and her husband David had raised their child together for 7 years, a loving family unit. Then, an Ancestry DNA test, one of those readily available kits, cost about $79, revealed her husband wasn't the biological father.
Oh, wow. After 7 years, how did they cope?
Emily described the shock as, quote, heartbreaking. It completely rocked their marriage, their whole family narrative. But what's remarkable is her decision. She chose to consciously redefine what family meant to them, prioritizing the love and the bonds they had already built over the biological connection. Her husband, David, understandably struggled immensely with feelings of betrayal. But, crucially, with the help of therapy, he reaffirmed his commitment as the child's father. He chose his role, his family.
That's incredibly moving that they could work through that. It really makes you think, doesn't it? When the DNA truth shatters everything, how do people rebuild? What does it tell us about what family really means?
It tells us a lot about resilience, I think, and about how our definition of family is perhaps becoming more flexible, more chosen. Stories like Emily's really underscore this double-edged nature of DNA testing. It provides clarity, yes, but sometimes at a very high emotional price. And it's probably no coincidence that counseling services, like BetterHelp, for example, reported seeing a 20% jump in cases related to DNA discoveries in 2024. People need support to navigate these revelations.
Definitely. So, okay, these discoveries are clearly deeply personal, highly emotional. What happens then when this very personal information moves into the legal system? The consequences there must be huge, too.
Oh, absolutely. When paternity is questioned, it very often ends up in court. The U.S. Census Bureau estimates something like 200,000 paternity cases hit the family courts every single year, and the stakes are enormous. We're talking about legal obligations for child support, which can average, $5,000 to $12,000 a year, sometimes more. We're talking about custody arrangements, visitation rights, and even inheritance rights down the line. A DNA test can legally establish those support obligations or completely end them if it excludes paternity.
And custody, too. Does biology automatically determine custody?
Not automatically, no. The standard is always the best interests of the child, but biological ties often weigh heavily, especially in initial decisions or contested cases. And inheritance, that can get dramatic. There was a California case in 2024 involving a $5 million estate. Everything got thrown into chaos when a DNA test proved the existence of an unknown heir. This is especially relevant for really large estates, those above the federal estate tax exemption threshold, which is set to be around $13.6 million in 2025. Finding a new heir can completely change who gets what.
Right, so big money, big decisions. Now, with all these at-home kits being so popular, like the one Emily used, can you just take those results to court? Or is there a difference?
That's a really important distinction and a common point of confusion. No, you generally can't just use an at-home kit result in court. For legal purposes, the test has to meet strict standards, usually set by the American Association of Blood Banks, the AAB. These legal tests cost more, maybe $400 to $800. And crucially, the sample collection has to follow a strict chain of custody procedure, usually done at an approved clinic or lab to ensure there's no tampering.
Chain of custody. Okay, so the court needs proof the right people were tested and the samples weren't mixed up or anything.
Exactly. A Family Court Review article from 2023 noted that courts routinely reject results from those direct-to-consumer at-home tests if they don't meet AABB standards and chain of custody rules. Trying to use one can just lead to delays and more legal costs for the family trying to establish paternity legally.
So getting the right kind of test is critical for legal matters. It sounds like even with a clear DNA result, the legal outcomes can still be messy.
Incredibly messy sometimes. You can have situations that blur the lines between, say, a legal win and personal hardship. Take a hypothetical case, like one discussed in Florida legal circles around 2025. A man presumed to be the father is excluded by a legal DNA test. So,
Right.
legally, he's relieved of, say, $10,000 a year in child support. That's a legal victory. But he might still face social stigma, judgment from the community. And, depending on the circumstances and the child's existing bonds, he might even lose custody or visitation rights he previously had, despite the biological truth. It just shows how this technology, while resolving one issue, can easily ignite new conflicts, personal, social, legal.
It really does sound like a classic double-edged sword then.
Yeah.
Massive power for getting answers, but also real potential for things to go wrong or cause pain. Can we break down those two sides, the power and the pitfalls?
That's a great way to put it. Let's start with the power. With that high accuracy, DNA testing has revolutionized dispute resolution. Scientific American reported in 2024 that these tests now resolve something like 90% of paternity disputes in the U.S., often within just weeks. Compare that to the potentially years of legal wrangling and uncertainty people faced before.
Weeks instead of years. That's huge for the families involved.
Absolutely. And it's incredibly powerful for reconnections, too. Think about adopted individuals. The Department of Health and Human Services estimates about 120,000 children are adopted each year in the U.S. For many adoptees, DNA testing offers a way to find biological relatives, gain a sense of closure, maybe build new relationships. There was a story in 2023 about an adoptee in Chicago finding a biological sibling through 23andMe, completely changing their life narrative.
Wow, okay, so clear power there. What about the other edge of the sword? The pitfalls.
Well, as we saw with Emily's story, unexpected results can put immense strain on existing relationships. That's not uncommon. A study in the journal Family Relations in 2024 found that about 30% of families who undergo testing report significant relationship strain afterwards because of surprising results. And then there are the privacy risks, which are a growing concern. We're talking about highly sensitive genetic data.
Right, you mentioned a breach earlier.
Yes, the GED match breach in 2024, reported by Wired magazine, exposed the profiles of 1.2 million users. That kind of incident really raises questions about how secure this data is, especially as these databases grow.
That's definitely worrying. What kind of legal protections exist for our genetic information? Are they strong enough?
There are some protections, but there are also significant gaps. The main piece of federal legislation is the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act, or GINA, passed back in 2008. GINA prohibits discrimination based on genetic information in health insurance and employment. That's good. However, it doesn't cover things like life insurance, disability insurance, or long-term care insurance. So you could theoretically be denied coverage or charged higher premiums for those based on a genetic test result.
Wait, really? So GINA doesn't cover all types of insurance?
No, it doesn't. And the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission actually reported 15 cases related to this kind of potential discrimination in 2024 alone. It's a gap that leaves people potentially vulnerable.
That seems like a major gap that needs addressing.
Yeah.
Are there other pitfalls? What about errors in the tests themselves?
Errors are extremely rare, but not impossible. False positives, meaning the test incorrectly says someone is the father, are estimated at maybe 0.05%, still incredibly low. These could happen due to lab error, sample mix-ups, or sometimes if a close relative, like a brother of the actual father, is tested instead. And then there are very rare biological conditions, chimerism, for instance. This is where a person actually has cells with different sets of DNA, maybe from absorbing a twin in the womb. It's rare, maybe 1 in 100,000 cases, according to a 2024 Journal of Forensic Sciences study, but it can seriously complicate test interpretation and requires real expert analysis.
Chimerism, okay, that adds another layer of complexity, albeit a rare one.
Yeah.
So thinking about all this, the science, the emotion, the law, the pros, the cons, how's all this really changing things on a bigger societal scale, beyond just individual families?
Well, it's fundamentally shifting conversations about truth, identity, and family structure.
Yeah.
We see the impact in the rising demand for counseling, like Talkspace reporting that 25% increase in DNA-related cases since 2023. People are grappling with these new truths and need help processing them.
So more demand for emotional support. What else?
Societally, it's a trade-off, isn't it? DNA testing empowers individuals to find answers about their biological origins, which can be incredibly validating. But it simultaneously carries this risk of disrupting established families and identities. Legally, yes, it streamlines many disputes, potentially easing court burdens, but it throws up really thorny ethical questions around consent, especially testing children, and the immense privacy implications of these huge genetic databases being compiled by commercial companies.
And those companies are big business now, right?
Huge. The U.S. genetic testing market was valued around $4.8 billion in 2025, according to MarketWatch. That kind of money drives incredible innovation, sure, but it also fuels commercialization. Companies increasingly blend health, ancestry, and relationship testing. MyHeritage found in a 2024 survey that about 35% of their users were testing for non-medical reasons, like curiosity or finding relatives, showing this broader cultural shift.
So it's becoming more mainstream, almost recreational for some.
Hmm.
Are there broader benefits, maybe public health?
There can be, yes. Establishing clear paternity can be important for child welfare, ensuring children have access to medical history, financial support, and inheritance rights. The American Bar Association suggests it helps reduce legal disputes in about 80% of contested cases, which benefits the system. But alongside that, you hear rising concerns. Go on social media, you see discussions, posts in 2025 warning about data dystopias, feels about how this genetic information could be misused by governments or corporations in the future.
Data dystopias. That sounds ominous. Is the regulation keeping up?
That's the challenge. Laws exist, like California's Genetic Privacy Act, which tries to give consumers more control over their data. But the technology and the market are moving so incredibly fast, regulation often struggles to keep pace. It leaves a lot of open questions about long-term societal impact. So if you try to connect all these threads, you see that DNA testing gives us this incredibly powerful tool for uncovering biological truth, a truth that can be clarifying, healing even. But it's a truth that sends out these profound ripples emotionally, ethically, legally, far beyond just the individuals involved. It forces us, I think, to ask a really fundamental question. How do we balance the clear benefits of knowing with the very real potential for pain, disruption, and unintended consequences?
That is the question, isn't it? Balancing clarity and consequence. It seems like moving forward, things like maybe mandatory counseling after unexpected results or strengthening privacy laws like finally extending GINA to cover all insurance could be crucial. And maybe more public conversation about the idea that family is often about more than just biology. Those seem like steps that could help people navigate these discoveries with, more support, maybe a bit less fallout. So, turning it over to you listening, what really stands out to you about all this? Do you think the biological truth is always worth the potential disruption? We genuinely want to hear your perspective. Leave us a comment below. Tell us if you agree or disagree with how we've summarized this really complex issue. Oh, and please let us know where in the world you're listening from. We're trying to grow our reach globally and love hearing from you all. And remember, for more deep talks like this, head over to Mind Expansion Daily. Like, subscribe, maybe buy us that coffee if you feel like it. The link's in the description. It all helps. This has definitely been a deep dive into the really fascinating, sometimes troubling world of DNA paternity testing. Thanks so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next exploration.